Chapter 14. This was it now. It was, as my granddad would have said, if he wasn't dead and worm food in the ground, time to either shit or not shit and stand up and go back downstairs and come back later. This was the moment the whole last few years of my life had been pointing to, and the moment the whole entire rest of my life would lead from. Would I make it, or would I perish en route? Or would I chicken out and head back to safety and spend the rest of my days wondering what might have been? These are the moments of destiny, and, as so often in the past, it was the thought of my future deathbed self and the sense of shame and regret I could imagine in old man me that spurred me on. How can you say you've truly lived your life if you never took a risk to pursue the things you always said you wanted, but chose instead safety and comfort and fear? I gulped in my being and grew silent and automatic. There was nothing to say or think, just empty the pockets, get what was needed, tighten and double knot the shoelaces, and start moving the legs towards America. AC must have picked up on it too. He became serious and businesslike, but in a gentle, non-invasive way that didn't distract me from the task ahead. 2 flashlights, he said, flicking each one on and off a few times. Brand new batteries, Duracell. The flashlights were good quality, and I was thankful for the batteries too. I knew only too well I'd have bought them from the dollar store, you know the type of batteries I'm talking about, and perhaps lived to regret it. Map, he said. Compass, energy bars, water bottle. I'll drink from the streams, I said. There's bound to be tons of water along the way. I want to travel as light as possible. I opened 2 of the energy bars and ate them there and then. Gave him the wrappers, put the 3rd in my pocket, then ate that one too. It's going to rain, he said. Take this jacket. He handed me a thin green raincoat with the price tag still showing. $4.99 from Value Village, a second-hand thrift store. I approved. Thanks, I said. I was all set. I was wearing shorts, sneakers, a t-shirt, and now the raincoat. No food, no water bottle, nothing extraneous or unnecessary. Go fast, I thought. Make it through before dawn. AC stepped back and looked at me, then handed me his phone. It's from OJ, he said. Wishing you luck. I took the phone from him and looked at the screen. Along with the good luck wishes were the words, go fast, and you won't need a water bottle, and I bet you're glad AC bought the batteries and not you. I handed the phone back to AC and laughed. AC beamed at me, and for a moment the 2 of us stood there in the almost night, grinning at one another and forgetting everything else. I felt such a connection with him and such gratitude I almost wanted to tell him that I loved him. This dude I'd only met 7 or 8 hours before. This guy who I'd argued with and misrepresented and misunderstood. But what did it all matter in a moment like this, when life and death were so palpable in front of us, and something real and dangerous and true was about to happen, all those miles from stores and televisions and the other nonsenses of civilization? I shook my head. Fucking hell, man, I said. I know, said AC, but you'll be fine. And then he embraced me, and I swear, I felt like 50 volts of electricity course through my body. We're all brothers, he said, even crackers like you. I held him tight and could have held him there forever. It was as though something was passing from him to me, some power, some energy, I don't know what, and I never wanted it to end. It was ecstatic, yet almost brought me to tears, and just when I thought I perhaps would stay in his arms forever, and forget the whole rest of everything, he squeezed me tighter one last time and gripped me by the shoulders and stepped back. It's time, he said. An average of 3 miles an hour and you'll get there by dawn. I'll be waiting on the other side, right at the end of this trail. There's a brown porta potty by the road there, next to the bridge that's marked on your map. You'll be fine. Fuck those bears. Yeah, that's what me and OJ used to say when we were playing for the Bills. Fuck those bears. They had nothing on us, and they ain't gonna have nothing on you. It's all fucking done. At some point in the future, we just gotta catch up, that's all. I nodded. I got it. It was the same way I'd written all my essays at university, just tuning into the ether, projecting myself a little ways forward in time and copying from the paper I'd already handed in. The same way I did everything, really. More like a guy who took dictation and followed instructions from some unseen power than actually created or decided anything himself. What was this unseen power? Be fucked if I knew. Probably just some weird lever-pulling bee living in my head and compelling me to do mad things for his own personal amusement and pleasure. Or, more likely, because he was compelled by the bee in his own head, and so on, and so on, and so on. Kind of mad, but there was a piece in it, and it generally seemed better to go with the bee than not go with it, from my experience. Ah, to be or not to be, I said to AC, that is the question. To be, he said, with a double E and a massive grin on his face. And I knew then that he understood everything. Always be, he said. Now go. I'll see you in the morning, and we'll be breaking fast in the good old US of A before you know it. Can't you just taste those hash browns? Can't wait, I said. Then I turned and marched purposefully into the night. Nothing to do but walk. Chapter 15. There are two ways to think about this next bit, and I think I'll go with the second one, which I've never done out loud before, which is really just the tale of a man walking a long way, just as millions of men have done before him. And so what if it was in order to do something illegal, such as breaking into one of the most hostile and criminally vindictive nations on the planet? So what if it was a foreboding wilderness, potentially full of critters and danger? And so what if there was rain and cold, despite it being late August? So what if it was years in the build-up, a cherished desire guided by magic and visions and dreams? I've told that other version of the story many times, and if you want to read that, then just check out some of my other books. But this time, it's time for something different, ever mindful of what this book is actually supposed to be about, and I guess I'll just cut to the chase. I walked. It was dark. There were moments when I felt like I was flying, practically running along that nighttime Cascade Mountain trail, and there were moments when I felt like I couldn't make it, after the 20-mile mark, once my knees and hips and blisters started screaming at me to stop. There were moments of ridiculous splendor and beauty. To come across, for example, an unexpected raging torrent in the middle of the night, now 15 miles from the nearest human, and to be so utterly and totally in its domain I felt like an alien visitor, surprised out of my own human ego obsession, to note that it still did its raging torrent thing, even when no one was around to admire it. It had been doing so before a single human even existed, and would still be doing so long after we were gone. There were moments when I was an automaton, simply marching through the night, my flashlight illuminating a tunnel in front of me, but everything else in perfect blackness, and I was grateful for it too, blissfully ignorant of what may have been lying there watching me go by, just mere feet away. I saw bears, thousands of bears, but they always turned out to be branches or tree stumps or piles of leaves or shadows, and finally the fear and shock left me, and I shrugged my shoulders and marched on, resolved to whatever fate had in store for me. Munched by bears? Fine. Allowed passage through? Thy will be done. It was all out of my hands, and my only job was to keep the legs moving, to kneel down every so often and sup from the frequent streams, to stay on the right path and pull out the compass and map when I felt I was going off it. I mainly just sang and said my prayers as I walked. Oh, patron saint of men who don't want to be eaten by bears or accosted by rangers, please keep them away from me. And palpably felt, as the miles progressed, that my life really was at a crossroads, that the past was being left far behind, and that it would be a whole different ballgame if I made it through this. At some point in the night I saw what I still believe to be 2 grizzly bears, their shuffling silhouetted humps clearly visible in the moonlight a few 100 feet away. I looked down and saw the massive shits of an animal I didn't recognize, and figured just this one time maybe those terrifying shapes ahead of me weren't tree stumps. I backed out of there slowly, and then quickly, and then frantically bushwhacked my way around them, heart pumping and breath breathing, and nothing ate me. I was a man going on a long walk in the rain at night. It just so happened to straddle the border between two nations. It was a little bit mad, but no madder than a lot of hikes and walks people do all the time. Same as when I finally did emerge into America, despite everything that had led to it and the illegalness and method of my entry. I may as well have been any other normal white Englishman on his holidays in the US, one among thousands. I was aching. I was beat. I'd walked 31 miles in the cold and wet, and my knees weren't working properly at all. But I emerged triumphant into the drizzly grey dawn on Washington Highway 20, and an AC was nowhere to be seen. There was the brown Portaloo, there was the bridge, but no Bronco and no AC. I was out there all alone, and so very clearly having arrived there by weird means, with no backpack, no camping gear, no car, no ID, nothing to offer me any sort of reasonable story should a cop come cruising by with questions about what I might be doing first thing in the morning in the middle of nowhere at the end of a trail from Canada. Now I got scared. For the first time since the early stages of the hike, some 9 or 10 hours previous. What if spotter planes were overhead? What if they were spying on me with infrared? I was out in the open, a sitting duck. I ran for the Portaloo. I pulled on the door, but it was stuck. I needed to get inside. I needed to find cover. I needed to hide from the planes and the rangers and the border patrols and the cops. I pulled on it with all my might and it burst open. I flung myself inside, and there was AC, sitting on the john with his trousers round his ankles and an almighty stink filling the admirably roomy brown plastic commode. That was my first thought, even before I got to wondering about AC. Man, it's spacious in here. Enough room to lie down, have a kip, or a man could even live in here with a bit of sprucing up. But those are the thoughts that genuinely pass through my brain probably tells you a little something about the kind of man I am. The kind of man who sometimes thinks he could live in a children's playhouse. The kind of man who has, yes, genuinely taken shelter and even, one time, a nap in a plastic Portaloo while passing through rainy towns on hitchhiking journeys. And thinking, it was all right, that was nice. I pulled the door behind me and turned to AC. AC, I whispered, are you alive? Are you asleep? I took a step closer to give him a poke and then grimaced. What the fuck had he eaten since I'd seen him last? I'd unloaded that Subway sandwich an hour or two before, and though it was an open-air doing, some nice large leaves nearby for toilet paper, in case you're wondering, I was pretty sure there was nothing in it that could produce a smell like this. It was like a cross between... well, words won't do it justice. Even if I type words like death or rotting garbage, or it smelled like something had eaten rotting garbage, crawled up his arse, shit itself, died up there, come back to life as a zombie, farted a bunch, done another shit, puked up its own genuine guts, and then died again, and also gone to rotting. It will only paint half the picture. It was worse than that. It was all that and more. Cabbages, and the filthiest kind of tramps, and that kid from school, and the sum total of all your own top 10 nastiest shits and farts, dear reader, and you know the ones I mean. AC, I said, holding my nose and breathing reluctantly through my mouth. AC, are you okay? A snort from his nose, a grunt, a twitch. He said. "What's sir?" His eyes were still closed, but at least I could breathe a sigh of relief after the awful fleeting panic that he'd done gone died right there in the middle of a shit. "Marlon," he said, opening one eye a slit and grimacing at this rude awakening. "What you doing here, man? I'm taking a dump." "Fucking hell, AC," I said. "I thought you died. Fucking smells like it." I laughed. I was so goddamn happy to see him I could have hugged him right there and then. God-awful stench and pants and trousers round his ankles and all. I did. I held in my breath and leaned over and put my arms around his neck, remembering so keenly the hug of the night before, simultaneously both just seconds and many lifetimes in the past. "Get off, man," he said, hurrying to pull his trousers up. "The fuck is wrong with you?" "Oh, AC," I said, "it's so good to see you. A man can't even take a shit without this crazy fucking limey climbing all over him. What the fuck?" "You were asleep, AC, and the hell I was," he said, buckling up his belt. "Did you wipe your ass, AC?" I said. He stopped his grumbling and fumbling and paused for a moment, looking for all the world like a man trying to tune into the sensation of the skin around his own anus hole and feel what was there. "Get out of here," he said, "for Christ's sake." And I did, exiting the portaloo and doing a little dance in the misty, damp dawn. I threw my arms up in the air. Everything was so hilarious and amazing and good. I'd made it. AC was here and he was alive. And he'd fallen asleep in the middle of a shit and then pulled his trousers up without wiping his arse. And he was just so goddamn adorable, all sleepy and grumpy and not knowing what was going on. I laughed and laughed, and then I stopped my dance and turned to the trees and smiled, turned to the sky and offered my thanks, turned to the road and I'm looking right at a cop car parked there. The cop inside is looking at me. Probably he's been there the whole time. Probably he's watched me come out of the portaloo and he's wondering what the hell I'm doing, dancing, idiotically like that, at the end of a trail from Canada. And now the door to the portaloo is opening, and here comes AC, and the cop turns on his lights and gets out of his car. I turn to look at AC. I turn back to look at the cop. The cop clocks AC, and he instantly reaches for his gun. He pops the little strap that covers it and holds a trembling hand tentatively next to it. He's a mustachioed cop of the American West, a small-town cop, a rural cop with a buzz cut and an itchy trigger finger. I know one false move, and AC's a dead man. They shoot black people, don't they? For no real reason, other than because they can. I close my eyes and wait for the inevitable, and then I hear the cop cry out, "AC Cowlings? Is that you? Goddamn, man, what the hell are you doing out here this time of morning?" The cop laughs. I open my eyes and see him drop the hand that was poised over the gun, and his face cracks into a smile. "Big fan," he says, reaching out his hand and holding it there for AC to shake. "I remember seeing you and OJ back in..." I turn to AC, and suddenly the world is moving in slow motion. I watch as he pulls a pair of Aris Isotona gloves from his pocket and slides them on, as he reaches around his back and grabs something from his belt, and as he throws this something lightning fast at the cop, as though it was some tiny frisbee, one quick flick of the wrist. The cop drops to his knees before us, a silver star embedded in his forehead, a thick stream of blood running down his face. He looks stupidly and imploringly at AC, and then he falls on his face in the gravel and is still. I have no idea what to do or say. Only the question why occurs to me, but I'm too scared to utter it, in case AC decides it's time to chuck a ninja star in my head too. I turn slowly and gingerly to look at him, but he looks totally nonplussed and uninterested. "Watch this," he says. He carefully removes the gloves, one finger at a time, and then walks over to the dead cop. He lifts the dead cop's head by his mustache and opens his mouth. He shoves the gloves inside. They don't fit completely, and the opening's blown out like a flower. "What are you doing?" I said, unable to keep it in any longer, simply desperate to say something, anything, to hear the sound of my own voice, something other than the steady, incessant fall of the rain on the gravel. "I don't know," said AC. "What are you doing?" "I don't know either," I said. It's probably one of those bits where I've painted myself into a corner. Just make it into a dream, he said. You got to the porta potty and then fell asleep in there. That way you don't have me producing that awful smell. It was turnips and cheese, by the way. And we can go on pretending this cop thing never happened. I think the reader needs to like me. I don't think killing this cop for no apparent reason. After all, it looked like he was just about to do something friendly. I don't think that's the best way to go about it here. Just because they murder brothers, don't mean we get to murder them. I don't know, I said, backing away. This is all getting a little too weird. 1 minute it's a strange but fun hike through the wilderness, and next it's... My eyes jerk open. There's drool in the corner of my mouth, and an awful smell in the air. I'm lying on the hard plastic floor of the portaloo. I must have fallen asleep in there. And then I hear a sound. I look up and see someone trying to open the door. Once, twice, 3 times, and then a knock. Limey, you in there? I need a goddamn shit something rotten, man. Hurry up, will you? Unless you want me to stand out here and shit my britches in the rain. Freaking AC. And I was so pleased to hear his voice, I could have taken that shit for him. Oh, it was a dream, or was it? Chapter 16. We were on the Washington Highway, winding through the grey mountains. It was good to be back in the Bronco and soothing my aching bones. As the crow flies, it was no distance at all from where we'd said goodbye the night before, but everything seemed different. No more the signs and colours of Canadian roads, no more distances in kilometres, thank God. And already I could see some truth in what AC was saying. There was just something a little more interesting about the land this side of the border. Not just the way it looked, but about the possibilities too. I got a sense of Canada as being a country that occupied a narrow band of the spectrum of human life potential. Somewhere right in the middle, safe and decent, but not particularly interesting. But in the States it seemed the whole spectrum was covered, from the grand and mighty and good, right to the lowest levels of stupidity and depravity and craziness. Here was the land of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and the land of 10 million rotten-toothed meth heads and opiate junkies. The land that gave us Dylan and Steinbeck, and the land that we gave Lennon to be gunned down by one among countless voice-hearing American psychos. All the madness and all the potential, and I was fair licking my lips for it. What reason to focus on mass shootings and killer cops and knuckle-headed soldiers and all the dumb fucking shit of America? Just think of the possibilities. The land where anybody could be president, and where a huge proportion of the population was waking up to the realization that this wasn't necessarily a good thing. I kept dozing in and out of sleep, my head nodding like I was repeatedly and regularly agreeing with some speaker unseen. The Japanese are a very civil people, they would say. I would nod, and then jerk my head back up and look around bleary-eyed and feel my lids growing heavy again. There's more than one way to skin a cat, they said. I agreed. There sure was. Not that I was speaking from experience, of course, unless reasoning that cats and rabbits are quite similar and extrapolating from that. Many a mickle makes a muckle, they said. I said. Limey, said AC, quietly and tenderly. I mumbled, my head slowly lowering forward, eyes so heavy, brain barely functioning. Limey, he said a little louder now. And then, Limey, wake the fuck up! Watch the goddamn road! I threw my eyes open and realized my hands were on the steering wheel, slammed on the brakes and tensed everything in my body and grimaced for the inevitable collision. The crunch of the Bronco into tree or rock, the roll and tumble off the cliff edge. What the hell was I doing driving? I didn't even remember getting behind the wheel. Why had AC given me the keys? Why would he do that to me? AC was sitting next to me in the passenger seat, chuckling. I looked out the window and realized we were parked stationary out the front of a small yellow diner with flower boxes on the windows and a neon open sign by the door. "What the fuck, AC?" I said, grumpily and tiredly and still not knowing where the hell I was. He was hooting, but apologizing too. "Sorry, man," he said. "I couldn't resist. You was so goddamn out of it you didn't know where you was. I pulled in here like 20 minutes ago and couldn't wake you up. Then you got out of the car, but it was like you was sleepwalking. Your eyes were closed, and you got your dick out and started pissing on some dude's truck. I was like, what the fuck you doing, Limey? And you just mumbled how you were peeing off a rock into a stream. And then you got back in the Bronco. You got back in the driver's seat and sat there like you were driving, moving the wheel, turning corners. Oh man, it was funny. And here he showed me what I must have looked like, eyes closed, head slightly down, hands out in front of me and moving the wheel a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. And you had this goofy little grin on your face and you kept nodding like you was agreeing with somebody and saying stuff like, "It's really nice, it's nice, really nice." Too fucking funny, man. He was laughing so much he had to hold his sides. But I was so crazy out of it I had no idea what funny even was. "I don't even know where I am," I said, "or what I am. But we're in the States, right? I had the weirdest dream." "Come on, Limey," he said. "You made it. This here's the bumfuck little town of Marble Mount, Washington, USA. Let's go get you some breakfast." We shambled into the diner and slid into a table at the window. I sat stupefied watching the middle-aged waitresses wander around, pouring cups of coffee for check-shirted old dudes in baseball caps. There was a long wooden countertop with leather-seated stools and a menu board above an opening to the kitchen. It was all very stereotypical and straight out of a movie, which is useful since it conjures up a fairly full image without me actually having to describe anything, even if you've never been to a place like that. Small-town America, old-school diner, waitresses that look like somebody's mum, working men getting their early morning coffees, the chef in the back in his white vest, flipping eggs and weird squares of, maybe it's meat, patties, I think they call them. And, there's various articles of Americana decorating the walls like it's still the 50s, or they wish it was, back when America was great, and if only it could be like that again. The 50s, when they still had segregation and lynchings, and women were under the thumb, and everyone was so uptight and repressed and frightened of communism. You've got to wonder with this old Trump, when exactly was this great America he wants to return to? Great for who? Probably just white guys with money who run things and control people, and the bozo-headed sons they put through fancy schmancy colleges. But for a huge chunk of the population, the natives, the wage slaves, the blacks down south, the foreigners America was bombing, and then later on the hippies and the students being tear-gassed by the National Guard, and all the nutters and junkies and the massive prison population, it don't really seem to have been all that good. Well, those were thoughts that wakeful me might have gotten into. But right now, I was lobotomized and sedated, with the mind of a child just emerged from the dentist's chair. Nothing left in my bird brain other than the ability to shake my head a little and turn my eyes this way and that, trying to get a bead on this thing I somewhere remembered other people calling reality. "You was so out of it when I found you," AC was saying. "I saw you come off the trail, and even though I was parked right there, it was like you couldn't see me. You looked in the sky, and then you ran for the porta potty, and I figured you was about ready to shit your pants. But then you didn't come out. And when I went over, I could hear you snoring there, crazy motherfucker." He shook his head at me and laughed. "You fell asleep right on the floor, right where people shit and piss." "Ho, ho, ho," he said. And then the waitress came over, and I found myself transfixed by this one long grey hair that stuck out from her chin. Lips moved, sounds were made, food, I guess, was ordered, and then she departed. Something about the sudden exit of the hair on her chin snapped me back to life. As if by magic, my brain kicked into gear again. "Oh, I'm veggie," I said to AC, "and I don't drink coffee." "You do now," he said. And then, "Nah, just kidding. I know that about you. OJ knows everything, right? He says, congratulations, by the way. He was there with you last night. He kept those 2 bears away." "What?" I said. "I ordered you eggs," he said. "Lots of eggs fried over easy. Country fried potatoes. French toast. A couple of pancakes, onions, peppers, cheese on the side, fruit salad, and a jasmine green tea." "What? You surprised they got green tea out here? This is America, my boy. This ain't no Abbotsford, Canada. You're in God's country now, the land of plenty. All on Papa OJ." Well, I could have cried he was taking such good care of me. He'd ordered the perfect breakfast and knew that my body was wailing for it. I'm not going to say I was so hungry I could have eaten a horse, because that seems a little impractical and a massive exaggeration, plus not quite in alignment with my pescatarian ethic. But let's just say that sustenance was required, and, thankfully, sustenance was on its way. The whole place smelled so good. Everything was kind of amazing. I sat there and it dawned on me that not a soul in this diner would wonder about my presence in their diner, in their country, whether I was there legally or not. Cops could walk in and out and I could say hi to them, and they wouldn't slit their eyes at me and ask to see my passport. They'd just tell me about some friend of their aunt's who had once thought about going to London several decades ago, but never did. I could feel my bones and my shoulders relax. The weight of imagined suspicion that I'd never even realized was there began to fall from me. I leaned back in the booth and felt a wide smile spread across my face. "Fuck yeah," I said to no one in particular, and an explosive gladness rippled through my heart. All these goddamn years, and now I was back. Just need to get this crazy OJ thing out of the way, and then the real fun can begin. See my friends, see the sights, feel all right. The waitress appeared with the food, 2 plates for each of us, stacked high with all kinds of goodies. AC had pretty much the same thing I had, except for the coffee. "I'm veggie too," he said. "You didn't know that? You don't know as much as you think you do you, Limey?" "No sé nada," I said. And he nodded and said, "Ah, Socrates," and we got stuck in. Fuck yeah, I thought again, piling it into my belly. There's nothing so good as a banquet and a feast when you've earned it through sheer physical exertion and exhaustion, and especially when the feast is swimming in fat and grease, all that oil oozing into the gaps in my bones where the energy had leaked out and lubricated my soul. I felt myself return to me, as though I'd outpaced it on the trail and it had taken a while to catch up. Or maybe it had been following me and chasing me ever since I got on the plane in London and zoomed to Canada. Or maybe it was even longer still. How long had we been apart, my soul and I? How long had we been frantically looking for one another and missing? Perhaps it was just sitting here waiting for me in this diner the whole time. Or perhaps I'm just talking shite. All that really matters right now are the 6 fried eggs on my plate and the way they're being shoveled ravenously into my mouth. Yum, 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 I said, loading another forkful. I fucking love eggs. Limey's got an appetite. Limey's got an appetite. Limey, he got an appetite, says AC. It's good to see a boy eat. 5,000 calories a day was our diet back when we was playing in the league. But if I ate that now, I'd be big as a house. Special treat for me this morning. I'll be back on the treadmill tomorrow in double time. You still run? I said, in between mouthfuls. Hell yeah, he said. At least 5 or 6 miles a day. How do you think I maintain this body? He lifted up his shirt, and where I expected unexpected abs, there was just a round old man's belly, same as any other. He slapped it proudly and told me he was the same pant size as when he was in his prime. Body dysmorphia, I guessed, but in a good way. Like I said earlier, it really was nice to be back in the land of misplaced and unfounded confidence, where people believed in themselves, whether there was reason to or not.